and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And in the news this week, is Trump still president?
Well, as we're taping, and you know me, I'm very pessimistic about this whole process. So
more about which later.
Yeah.
But there's an independent body called the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, and they slammed the Trump administration in a massive report.
Which is very heartening, but you know, what will it get us? That and what we used to say, that and $1.75 will get you on the subway.
Yeah, not anymore.
A teacher in Utah told a fifth grader not to be thankful on Thanksgiving for his gay dads.
Catholic leaders in Michigan invoked Pope Francis to deny communion to a lesbian judge.
Louis Clay, the founder of the Episcopal LGBT group Integrity in 1974, has died.
A true pioneer. Matthew Shepard was once again honored at Washington National Cathedral.
The U.S. ambassador to Zambia.
You got that?
Sparked an international incident by objecting to a Zambian draconian sentence for two men who had gay sex. It's quite the incident.
In Brazil, a mother was sentenced for killing her own gay son.
A famous Star Wars actor, and other credits too, declared his gender fluidity.
And we're going to review Jagged Little Pill, the Alanis Morissette musical. Alanis. Let's call the whole thing off.
Yes.
On Broadway.
I must say, when I watch things on TV, I'm often tempted to correct people's pronunciations of things.
Me too.
It's very frustrating when I can't.
Well, when I saw The Inheritance, one of the characters goes, Edward Albee, and of course it's Albee, and the character later corrects somebody's pronunciation of something else. Forget, but it's just, you know. Anyway, by the way, thank you for all these nice end-of-the-year notes that some of you were sending of appreciation. We very much appreciate it. If you want to, you know, our viewers do communicate with us. If you go to our website at gayusatv.org, you'll see how you can contact us. And a lot of you send us news, which we do use on this show, but we appreciate it.
It's true.
Okay, Trump. And by the way, while you were all off watching the impeachment hearings, the Trump administration hosted Hungary and Brazil, among others, at a conference at the Capitol, the second International Conference on Family Policy, Heritage Foundation, the National Right to Life Committee, a host of anti-LGBT representatives cooking up how they're going to get us all over the world.
In the U.S. Capitol, simultaneous with the impeachment hearings. Really, they brought this hatred and bigotry into the Capitol.
That's who they pal around with. But, and this has all been documented by the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, which is an independent body. And by the way, if you sign up for our newsletter, we'll give you the link to this 621-page report. I mean, they slammed Trump over all kinds of civil rights violations, including a big section on anti-LGBT, undoing decades of civil and human rights progress in general in this country.
The title of the report, did you say this, Are Civil Rights a Reality? The answer from them is no.
But my favorite is the White House pushback on this. They said the radical left is pushing disgusting and false accusations that LGBT Americans are threatened, and the president has appointed LGBT Americans to the highest levels of government. And the DOJ disagrees with the findings, too.
Imagine that. The commission says that because the administration has so eviscerated the staffs of various agencies, they can no longer keep up with discrimination complaints, even were they inclined to hear them. And they say this is a devastating situation and just clearly going downhill a mile a minute. They are, as you said, undoing decades of civil and human rights progress. And this is in just 3 years. They have managed to just carve out every human rights protection they can find.
And they'll get backed up by their judicial nominations. Trump got this guy, Andrew Brasher, who was the former Solicitor General of Alabama, onto the U.S. District Court in May, just in May, by a 52-47 vote.
It took him a year to do it. He had nominated him the year before. The nomination got rejected. He re-nominated him.
But he's done so well that just confirmed in May that he's been nominated to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. He's only 38 years old, deeply opposed to voting rights, LGBT rights, has defended laws requiring attorneys to be appointed for fetuses, says kids do worse with gay parents, opposes environmental protection laws, and wants zero restrictions on semi-automatic weapons. So now he's going to get a life appointment on the Court of Appeals because of who's in power.
We suspect he's on the fast track to the Supreme Court. And if not him, others who are clones of him. But he not only is against same-sex couples as parents, he says kids need a biological mother and father. He wouldn't approve of adoptive parents of any sexual orientation.
Oh, by the way, one of the guys who was at that, likely at that hate fest, Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council, you should know this, now says that Christians must boycott Chick-fil-A because they funded Southern Poverty Law Center, which calls him a hate group. So nobody's allowed to eat Chick-fil-A anymore.
Somehow I don't think they're going out of business. Now, one little bright spot we noticed in the impeachment hearings this week, Professor Pamela Karlan from Stanford, one of the pro-impeachment people testifying, that's her on the right, and that's one of the lead Republican haters on the left, Collins.
Of Georgia.
Professor Pamela Karlan describes herself as a snarky bisexual Jewish woman.
Her partner?
She has a female partner. She clerked at the Supreme Court for Harry Blackmun and wrote most of the Bowers v. Hardwick dissent that he registered.
She's argued 9 cases at the Supreme Court, including the business of being fired over sexual orientation, right?
She worked at the Obama Department of Justice as an assistant attorney general, or I may get the title wrong.
She was award-winning.
Award-winning for her implementation of the Windsor decision.
Well, I was just impressed with the way she took on Collins. She said, I'm insulted by the suggestion that as a law professor, I don't care about the facts. I read every one of those witness statements. Don't tell me, Mr. Collins. I mean, she just let him have it back.
Yeah, unfortunately, then Jonathan Turley, law professor, let us have it back by saying that this impeachment inquiry is totally invalid and there's no grounds to do the impeachment.
It's up to the House.
And that it is the House that is obstructing justice by not letting the Supreme Court decide on the validity of the inquiry.
Supreme Court has no role in impeachment.
Well,
other than the Chief Justice presides over the Senate trial.
All I can tell you is that he sat up there very calmly and confidently and put out a whole line of reasoning that looked very reasonable.
Got any more Trump stuff, or should we talk about politics?
I think we can move on.
Well, Ann said to watch out for Bloomberg, and in the Harris poll, he went from 3% to 6%.
That was our bet. We were trying to remember what we put a bet on. I think I bet that Bloomberg was going to do well.
I forget how well.
Yeah, me too.
But we'll see. We'll figure it out. We'll go to the tape. He passed Kamala Harris, and she withdrew.
Boom, she's gone.
But in that poll, Biden is at 31, Sanders 15, Warren 10, Buttigieg 9, Harris is at 2%, and that's why she's out, because she can't raise any money. And this was a poll of Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents.
She doesn't have a compelling story, and she kept moving all over the place.
In the Quinnipiac poll,
she's an attractive candidate, but she just didn't. She didn't have a reason for us to support.
In the Quinnipiac poll, Buttigieg is in second, and Buttigieg, of course. Well, anyway.
Well, he continues to be popular. He's doing very well in Iowa. He's rising in New Hampshire, but he's a controversial guy.
Yeah. He was out ringing the bell for the Salvation Army this week, controversially. That seemed to attract a lot of attention. Anyway, and Elizabeth Warren was at a town meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And a woman who was 17 years old, only identified as Ray Lynn, asked her if there was ever a time when somebody she looked up to maybe didn't accept you as much. And Ray Lynn started to cry, and Warren comforted her, and Warren talked about how at 22 she had to tell her mother that she wasn't going to, her marriage wasn't going to work, very disappointing to Mom. And Ray Lynn's issue apparently was about being LGBT and talking about this at Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So they had, I thought, a very sincere and deep moment. And I thought Elizabeth Warren was authentically moved and empathetic. And I like seeing that.
We don't have a candidate, you know.
We do not. We get criticized for not cheerleading for Pete Buttigieg.
Or criticizing people enough or whatever. So you work it out. You have a vote. Everybody's got a vote.
If you want to nominate Pete, we're all on board.
Okay. Well, yes. Well, I mean, you know.
As we are with any of those people.
I vote for Beavis and Butthead over. I think on The View they said Chuck E. Cheese over Trump. You know.
I say a fire hydrant.
Or a random person off the street could do better.
Yes.
All right.
Most of them, not all of them.
No.
All right. In Utah,
boy.
The government and the Mormons have reached a compromise on outlawing conversion therapy for minors. They tried to do it through the legislature. It didn't get very far. The Mormons said they supported a ban, but then they sort of withdrew that, and the legislature didn't pass it.
As long as we can still tell people it's wrong, go right ahead and pass the law.
So here's the new compromise. You can't, the whole point of these laws is that religions can do what they want, but professionals, licensed professionals, are under these laws banned from doing what is considered malpractice.
Especially if you're getting third-party
reimbursement.
Yeah.
Especially from the government. So the compromise by the Mormons and the government of Utah is, all right, we'll ban conversion therapy for minors by professionals unless the professionals are clergy or are working with family members.
Well, again,
really?
Again, I don't care what they do as long as they're not being reimbursed for it by my tax dollars or your tax dollars.
Well, I do care because there's so much information that this is so harmful to people, so I'd rather it not be taking place under these circumstances. I think people can go to therapy, obviously, to discuss their lives and their concerns and their doubts and whatever, but if you go to therapy and they say, well, start putting an elastic band on your wrist and snapping it every time you have a thought about same-sex attraction, I don't consider that valid therapy.
Let's stay in Utah. Let's go to Cedar Hills, to the Deerfield Elementary School, 5th grade class, substitute teacher. What are you all grateful for at Thanksgiving? And one kid says, my 2 dads. And the teacher says, that's nothing to be thankful for. Not only that, she goes into a 10-minute tirade against homosexuality. And the girls in the class, 3 girls, we got a picture of the dads of the kid, but and one of whom is apparently famous.
He is, I'll tell you about him.
But the girls in the class go, stop this! And the girls go off to the principal and say, you gotta get her out of here. She's a menace.
And the principal, to his credit,
off the premises,
fires her. The substitute teacher is out, and they support the 11-year-old boy who is thankful for his dads.
Who are Louis and Joshua Van Amster.
No, Van Amstel. Louis Van Amstel is a former star of Dancing with the Stars as one of the professional dancers. I don't know what he's doing living in Utah, but there he is. And
well, a lot of, nice place.
It's a gorgeous place. It's one of my favorite places.
I may have to go
but
there
I believe
too,
they taped the show in L.A.
Well,
people live all over and do all sorts of things. But
anyway, he said he's proud of the school.
Me too, and
the 3 girls.
Grateful. Oh, the 3 girls are just fantastic.
That's what, they talk about this all the time. You need upstanders, not bystanders. When stuff happens, speak up. You've always done that in your life, in your school life, your whole life.
I would love to think so. I can't claim 100% on that, but what it makes me think is, A, these girls were raised with good values and strong parents who taught them to be strong. And I think they're going to have bright futures, although the old studies used to say that girls were strong up until puberty, and then they started caving to the boys.
But then there's Michigan in Grand Rapids. We're at the Catholic parish of St. Stephen's Church, where the pastor, Scott Nolan, told the chief judge of the 63rd District, Sarah Smolinski, it's good to see you in church because you and Linda are married. I'd like you to respect the church and not come to communion anymore. She was baptized there. Her family grew up there. She'd been there for 100 years.
She had contributed $7,000 to the church rebuilding program.
So the pastor did this privately, and she's obviously taken it public because she's offended. And but the diocese is backing up the priest, this punk priest. They're saying
he's such a pompous ass.
Oh my God, he's a kid. He's a kid. He's like 30 or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, the diocese statement said, though they quoted Pope Francis saying, "Those who approach the body and blood of Christ may not wound the same body by creating scandalous distinctions and divisions among its members." Or, as Sister Mary Ignatius explains it all for you, said, "Do you know that thing that makes Jesus puke?" Which is basically the point here.
Now, we don't know that they are visiting the same sentence on other sinners in the church.
No.
They picked out this judge. Now, she, on the other hand, got an invitation from the United Methodists in town to come to their church, and they welcomed her in, and she's happy there and grateful, and it's all very loving and warm there.
I taught Sunday school in 1974. I was a Catholic, and when I came out publicly as the president of the Gay Student Union, a delegation of the parish council, I thought they were my friends, went to the pastor and wanted me removed.
Really?
Yes, and he said, well, I can get rid of him, but then I got to get rid of all the other sinners in the parish, and I don't think I'm going to do it. He stood by me. Bishop, his name was Bill Stickle, may he rest in peace. But not resting in peace, can we talk about what's going on in Pennsylvania and Ohio about abortion? Because it's just
sure.
outrageous. In Ohio, they passed a bill to consider doctors who perform abortions guilty of aggravated murder, and they're requiring doctors to at least attempt in an ectopic pregnancy to reimplant the fertilized
Fetus.
egg in the uterus. A physiological impossibility and extremely dangerous, but they passed this bill. And then in Pennsylvania, they proposed a bill that would require death certificates and burials for fetal remains, including fertilized eggs, which often wash out in menstruation and things like that. And they put a $50 to $300 fine and up to 30 days in prison if you don't comply with this. It's what is going on? What is going on? It's very scary.
Well, on a much lower level, as long as we're in Ohio, Notre Dame Academy, I think in Toledo, sent a bunch of 8th graders on a field trip to Chicago.
This is funny.
To a performance of the Nutcracker. But when the chaperone teachers from Notre Dame Academy noticed in the program that there was a gay male couple playing the parents in the performance, they got the whole field trip of students, got them up from their seats and out of the auditorium before the performance even started.
The story has a happy ending.
Yes.
Because the president of the school issued an apology saying it was contrary to their inclusive spirit, which includes sexual orientation and gender identity. And the students painted a rock in rainbow colors with the word "God loves you" in response to this incident. The kids.
Yes, but meanwhile, they got pulled out of the Nutcracker performance. But now we've had 2 stories of heads of school doing the right thing.
Yes.
That is a switch over time. We're very happy to hear that. I remember a school principal in Brooklyn telling me I was a murderer for doing condom demonstrations with students.
Well, those were, by the way, those were banned in classrooms by Rudy Giuliani. We used to be able to do them. We used to be able to do them before AIDS, but he banned them. And Mike Bloomberg kept that ban on condom lessons in classrooms. Think about that before you vote for him.
In Tennessee, a couple of stories. In Troy, Tennessee, a small town, they have canceled the annual Christmas parade. They're citing scheduling conflicts, but the real issue is that there were threats against a float in the parade that was going to have a rainbow flag and the sign, "Love Everybody." That was too upsetting to people. Violent threats canceled the parade.
Right.
Meanwhile, in better news from South Memphis, Tennessee, where the Out Memphis organization is going to build an emergency temporary shelter for a few homeless LGBT people ages 18 to 24, which I think is sensitive of them to realize that people at that age, and you know this from working with New Alternatives, 18 to 24 is a very vulnerable age because you've sort of aged out of youth services, but are not capable of...
We do take youth through those ages.
I know, because you recognize that, and Out Memphis recognizes that too. And in the San Francisco area, the Rainbow Community Center of Contra Costa County is enthusiastically supporting its staff affiliating with the Teamsters. They are unionizing with the full approval of the board of the community center.
All right, one more piece of good news before I get to a lot of bad news. In Minneapolis, the city council, did we talk about this? Unanimously banned conversion therapy for minors. The council includes Andrea Jenkins, a black trans woman, and Philippe Cunningham, a trans man of color. Mm-hmm. And in New Jersey, the Assembly passed a bill banning the LGBT panic defense. It goes to the Senate and then Governor Murphy.
Okay, well, I guess we should move. I'll also say that in New York City, the LGBT Historic Sites Organization is adding a couple of places. The home of Patricia Highsmith.
A controversial writer.
Yeah, well, she lived for a while while she was...
Have you read her diaries?
No, I haven't. But while she was attending Columbia, she lived at 48 Grove Street at Bleecker.
She wrote The Talented Mr. Ripley and a lot of other very dark stories.
And Carol, the story that became the movie Carol.
Yes.
And they have also designated a residence of Georgia O'Keeffe.
She lived in the Hotel Shelton, which is something else now. She was married to Alfred Stieglitz, but had a bunch of relationships with women.
And that hotel is on Lexington between 48th and 49th, and it's famous because of the landscapes or cityscapes she painted from a high floor room there, and it was very unusual to see cityscapes from that perspective. They're beautiful cityscapes.
Right. All right, bad news from New York City. The trial has begun this week of a man who beat his girlfriend's 6-year-old son to death in the process of, quote unquote, making a man out of him. Here's the poor kid. Geraldine Perkins, the mother, has already pleaded guilty to manslaughter and is serving time. She is testifying against Raishim Smith in the murder of her son. He beat the boy with a shower rod, hung him up on the back of a bathroom door, and then just threw him against the bedroom wall. The kid had endured months of torture for not being man enough. Well, and 5 Administration for Children's Services employees have been fired over this case.
Well, there were 5 reports to the Administration for Children's Services over the months, and they were all ignored, and thus this poor boy is dead. Zamir Perkins.
I have some more monster stories.
Okay.
A teaching assistant in Houston, 51 years old, woman, had sex with a male student underage 4 times to turn him straight. They belonged to the same church. She told the police she only had oral sex on him, and she's being charged with sexual assault.
The educational form of conversion therapy.
And in Florida, a father, 30 years old, abandoned his little son on the side of a highway because he suspected him of being gay. I didn't get the exact age of this kid, but the father's only 30. And he suspected the kid of being gay because he caught him looking at male porn. He told the boy to pack a bag. He was taking him to the police to be rehomed, in other words, shipped out. He is charged with 3 counts of child abuse. The boy was found abandoned on the side of the highway in tears. And in Indiana, LGBT activists in Evansville tried to testify about the plight of trans students, and the school board shut them down, and a board member, Ann Ennis, her name should be said, told them there would be no support for trans students, and she walked out pantomiming the violin and saying, "Cry me a river." That's sweet. Merry Christmas.
Not raised by the parents who raised the 3 girls in Utah.
No, okay.
Better news from, of all places, Waco, Texas.
Yeah.
A state commission on judicial conduct has issued a formal warning to a justice of the peace in Waco, Diane Hensley, because Diane won't do same-sex weddings.
She's Christian.
Well,
But she still does sex discordant weddings, heterosexual
she does,
weddings.
and she also hands out a piece of paper to people saying, here are the alternate places you can get married if you're a same-sex couple.
I can't dirty my hands with your sin.
I would like to give her a little more credit than that, but she is misguided if she thinks that that is the appropriate thing to do.
She has violated the Texas Code of Judicial Conduct
I would say
that requires judges to be impartial. Now, legislators in Texas, they want to let her do this.
Oh, of course, and I'm sure they'll pass a new law to let her. But that is the worry of the State Commission on Judicial Conduct, that because she is known to not do same-sex weddings, LGBT people will feel rightfully that they cannot get an even break from her in a judicial proceeding, not having anything to do with marriage, and that is a legitimate concern. So,
what would Jonathan Turley say?
I think she needs some re-education, this Diane Hensley.
Hey,
I'm willing to give her a chance.
Hey, we're losing Gus Kenworthy. You know, he is going,
well, not really.
He is going to ski in the next Olympics in 2022 for the United Kingdom. He was raised in the United States, but he was born there, and his mom is British, and he didn't say exactly why he's at it with us.
Now, he's very cute, and he won the silver medal in freestyle skiing at Sochi in 2014, while Adam Rippon was winning a medal in skating, and they did a lot of stuff together and became good friends. And Gus went on to do a little acting, including in American Horror Story 1984, but now he's going back to the slopes to try to win a medal in Beijing in 22.
He has a very popular Instagram account.
Well, because he's very cute.
We lost a pioneer this week. His name was Louis Clay. I knew him. He was born, and when I knew him, he was Louis Crew, but he took the name of his partner.
Husband.
Yeah, husband, yes. That's Louis back in 1971. He was the founder of Integrity, the Episcopal LGBT group. And this was way back in 74. He has died at the age of 82 in Newark after he had a stroke. His husband was Ernest Clay, was by his side. He was a native of Alabama. He was very Southern.
We have a picture of him with his husband, too. Yeah, there's Louis on the right and his husband, Ernest, on the left.
Louis taught English at Rutgers. He was a widely published poet and writer.
He was on the board of the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force from 76 to 78, and on the Executive Council of the whole Episcopal Church from 2000 to 2006.
Very soft-spoken, but he got things done, and a sweet guy.
And as long as we're in the realm of religion, let's visit the plaque dedicated to Matthew Shepard at the National Cathedral in Washington.
Yes, his remains are there, and this is a plaque that points people to the remains. It says, rest gently in this place, you are home safe now.
So they had the ceremony to unveil the plaque. There it is.
His mother, Judy, spoke at the service and said, we need to stop reflecting on what happened to Matt, and we need to focus on the living and we have to make sure that it doesn't happen again. The plaque is modeled on the same one for Helen Keller in the same church. That's where she's buried.
It's translated in Braille under the written words.
And sadly, Matt's parents were concerned that if they buried him in a cemetery, that it would be defiled because of the horrible people out there.
I think that was a reasonable decision on their part.
Look what happened to the signs marking where Emmett Till was killed. That gets shot up all the time. They've made a bulletproof version now.
Yeah.
So anyway, that whole service went on for like an hour and a half. You can see online by going, we have the website up there, yeah. It's go to cathedral.org / Matthew Shepard. That'll be included in our email. All right. Do we want to talk about, you want this under entertainment news or now?
Later.
Okay, we'll do it under entertainment news. All right.
You'll just have to wait to see what we're talking about.
All right.
International news.
Oh, yes.
Hungary, while showing up at the U.S. Capitol to condemn gay people and anything left of Attila the Hun, has withdrawn from the Eurovision Song Contest. Too gay! Well, this is the work of Prime Minister Viktor Orban, who is, of course, best buddies with Donald Trump and just following in his path.
But the big story is that our U.S. ambassador to Zambia, two men there in Zambia were...
Well, Daniel Foote is the U.S. ambassador. Let's identify him.
Yes, but two men there were arrested in 2017 for having sex. They were sentenced to 15 years in prison. They had sex at a lodge, and they were observed through a window by a worker. This is 15 years in prison. By the way, the last guys to be hanged in Britain were observed through a keyhole in the 1830s for having sex.
Bowers v. Hardwick were...
well, the police came in there.
Yeah, but they were at home having sex, and the police
Anyway,
invaded.
our ambassador, Daniel Foote, he was horrified by this. He says, they have hurt no one. I can't find anything in your Constitution against this. What the hell are you doing? But President Lungu said, the hell with you. This is our country. Next you'll be wanting us to approve of sex with dogs, and we're not going to do it. And we don't care if you cut off foreign aid.
Well, the president said,
he said animals don't do it.
Yes, exactly. I want to send him the book about animals who do it. Who, homosexual behavior
bees do it.
Has been observed in hundreds of animal species. But the U.S. ambassador said, look, the government steals all your money. Yeah. They beat the citizens. The poachers are off killing all the animals and stealing all the horn.
He said, don't give me...
Nothing happens to them.
He says, don't give me this. We have cordial relations. All you've got is your handout.
Now, one may wonder how a Trump administration ambassador could be saying these things, but it turns out he's a career State Department official, one of the few left in the State Department.
And the Trump administration doesn't care about Zambia.
Right, which is probably how he got the job in the first place. It's one of those S-hole countries, right. I'm sure. So, but having spoken up in this forceful and forthright way, like the three girls in Utah, who I'm going to continue to go back to because they are my heroes.
They are.
And now Daniel Foote is too. He has been the subject of death threats. He
had to cancel World AIDS Day events there because he couldn't go out in public.
Oh my God. But thank you, Daniel Foote, for speaking up. We're proud of you and proud to have you as an ambassador from our country.
All right.
As opposed to a lot of other things. In Nigeria, there were 57 men arrested for public displays of affection with each other.
Public displays of affection.
47 of them have pleaded not guilty. 10
can't be found.
Right. The government is testing their ability to procreate. And
they said it was a birthday party. They have a 2014 law there that bans same-sex marriage, and the penalty is 14 years for that. No one has been convicted under it, so this is a big test case about how they're going to treat gay people. These laws are generally used to extort the people being arrested.
All right, we have several stories from Australia. First of all, they have been debating a new national religious freedom bill to further restrict non-discrimination laws and allow people claiming some kind of religious objection to discrimination.
The right-wing prime minister is a guy named Scott Morrison. He's very fundamentalist, but he's delaying the bill because the right wing doesn't think it's strong enough.
And
we're against it entirely, of course.
And public polling on it finds that the public is not down with these religious exemptions.
Well, you know, this would require companies that have more than $50 million in business, restricting them from canning an employee who expresses controversial religious beliefs outside the workplace. So if, you know, somebody's out there preaching death to gays, I guess, because that's in the Bible.
Well, this is the controversy, because it cuts both ways. Both left and right-wing people have been fired for things they've said outside the workplace. And where do you draw the line on that?
I actually read something about Leviticus this week. You know, we always, the passage is,
Be careful what you say.
A man shall not lie with a man as with a woman. It is an abomination. They shall be put to death. But a scholarly interpretation of that actually says it's about child molestation. That is what is condemned.
There are a lot of interpretations like that. But my point being that where you draw the line on people's statements outside the workplace, outside the school, outside the whatever, versus what they say on the job is a tricky situation.
You know, what are you going to do with Margaret Court, the famous tennis player? Tennis Australia has invited her to the Australian Open to celebrate her Grand Slam of 50 years ago. But they said, we don't agree with her personal views, which have demeaned and hurt many in our community over a number of years. She's a fundamentalist preacher.
She is, and she's forthright about her statements against homosexuality and same-sex marriage. Billie Jean King and others a couple of years ago were asking that her name be taken off the stadium in Australia, but it has remained, and now she spoke out publicly complaining that she had not been invited to come or have her expenses paid to come to the Australian Open for the observance of the 50th anniversary of her Grand Slam, whereas Rod Laver, in a year or two prior, had been better taken care of. So now they've been shamed into
her name is on the stadium.
Away. Yes. The controversy continues.
And then there's the rugby star there, Israel Folau, F-O-L-A-U.
Yeah.
He's the one who said brush fires in Australia were punishment for legalizing same-sex marriage. And even Scott Morrison, the prime minister, the right-winger, said, that's appalling. So he tried to walk it back. He was fined for his past anti-LGBT statements, and he's been suing Rugby Australia for $14 million. He got a settlement this week. Yes,
an undisclosed settlement. Both sides are claiming contentment with whatever the settlement was, but they won't tell us the details.
Does he get to play ball again?
He's asking for reinstatement. That hasn't been settled yet. Meanwhile, in Perth, Western Australia, the Rainbow Rebellion, which is more rebellious LGBT group, is mad at the regular Pride March for having cops in the march and too many corporations and restricting the number of individual people allowed to march. This is a movement around the world. They're having the same fight in London. They're having the same fight in Sydney, Australia, and many other places. And that fight is continuing here in New York, where we are planning the next Queer Liberation March for next year.
For Pride Day, the last Sunday in June. But we don't know where we're going to go. So if you've got suggestions, send them in.
Yeah, well, we'll take them and pass them along.
What should we do next year?
Where should we march? Should we do the same march? Should we do a different march? I kind of like variety. But we're going to discuss that.
In China, 200,000 people have petitioned the Chinese authorities to recognize same-sex marriage as a civil law provision, which is under review, and that's why they're making these comments. Hundreds of thousands have also shared their LGBT it's a big country, their love stories online. It's not expected to be included in the revisions, but the group said they wanted to be heard, and they are being heard.
They're speaking up. And in Hong Kong...
like the three girls.
Exactly. Well, I assume that they've caught on to this rhythm now, and I don't have to say it as much. In Hong Kong, a gay man married to another man in London, there they are, the happy couple, are challenging the inheritance laws because they're afraid that should one of them die, the other will not be able to inherit because Hong Kong does not recognize same-sex marriage. So they're challenging that in court so they can try to establish some rights. And in Japan, Yokohama has become the third city to recognize same-sex partners with certificates of partnership.
80% of people in Japan under 60 now support same-sex marriage. 80%.
Well, look, it took a long time in this country to get it legalized state by state, to grow public opinion, and then the Supreme Court decided to go along with it.
All right, I got a bad story from Brazil.
All right.
A mother there was sentenced to 25 years for killing her 17-year-old son for being gay. His name is Itaberli Lozano. And he fought with his mother after he came out 3 years ago. So he moved in with his grandmother. The mother lured him back on the promise of a reconciliation, but had hired hitmen to kill him on his return. And they beat him up, but they didn't want to kill him. So she takes out a knife and kills him. And then she and her husband took him to a field and set him on fire. That's a charming story.
Horrible.
In the land of Bolsonaro.
Well, and that's the mood that's being set. In New Delhi, India, 1,000 people turned out to protest the new proposed bill on transgender rights on the grounds that it doesn't go far enough, and it in fact is a step backwards in imposing new levels of requirements for being certified, and so they're fighting against that.
Cuba is banning travel outside the country for a bunch of gay journalists. I'll get into this. A lot of them are associated with the Washington Blade in their work, but they do local work. And their social media accounts are being hacked, and the people are putting up homophobic texts there. It's not a free society.
In London, here, this story struck me. I don't know quite how to understand it, but it seems to be some kind of breakthrough. Lesbian couple decide to have a baby. Here's what they did. Donna and Jasmine. We have a picture of Donna and Jasmine with their baby. Donna on the left, Jasmine on the right, baby in Donna's arms. So the doctors extracted an egg from Donna, and then they re-implanted it. I'm not sure whether it was fertilized at that point. It may have been. But the idea was that the egg was incubated by Donna for 18 hours. And then they extracted the egg and implanted it in Jasmine. Again, I don't know at what point it was fertilized, but Jasmine then carries the baby to term. So the breakthrough is that both now have incubated the baby for some period of time.
And a biological connection at some level, even though not DNA.
Yes, Jasmine doesn't seem to, it sounds like Jasmine doesn't have any DNA involved, but carried the baby to term and gave birth. So they say that this brought us closer together emotionally because they had both participated in the gestation of the fetus and the baby. I'd like more details on this. I'm not sure I understand why it wouldn't have been sufficient to just take the egg from Donna, fertilize it, and implant it in Jasmine. Right. I don't know why you needed the extra step of Donna incubating the egg for a while.
And we don't want to give the Ohio legislature any ideas about how easy this is.
No, it doesn't sound easy to me at all. It sounds almost miraculous that they were able to go through all this and carry it off and have the baby be born and be okay. But that's the story for whatever it is.
Also in the United Kingdom, they have what they call the chief rabbi there. And they have a new one, Ephraim Mirvis. They had a big ceremony for him. All the politicians in UK came out, but he vows to continue the ban on women rabbis and same-sex marriage. So progressive Jewish groups there are saying, could you just please call yourself the chief Orthodox rabbi, because you're embarrassing us.
Good luck with that. Better news from Bogota, Colombia, where there was a meeting of 40 human rights lawyers to form the LGBT litigation network for 13 Latin American countries, both Central and South America. They're going to work on decriminalizing homosexuality, legalizing marriage and adoption, facilitating gender identity issues and dealing with murder prosecutions. This is an effort supported by the Ford Foundation, the Arcus Foundation, and the Open Society Foundation, and it's a huge step to have these lawyers get together to organize and coordinate their work all over Central and South America. I find this enormously inspiring and optimistic to have them put this together.
And some of you may be inspired by Denmark, where they let a same-sex couple be on Dancing with the Stars. We have never done that here. This is the 16th season over there in Denmark. And the gay couple won. We got a picture of them.
Well, we have talked a few weeks ago about how they were very popular and were doing very well in this competition.
It's a comedian, Jacob Farabee, 42, and his dance partner was Silas Holst, 36.
And Jacob is the out gay celebrity contestant, the comedian. When he was picked for the show, he asked to be paired with a male partner, and that's what's never been done. There have been gay contestants on the American show and presumably around the world, but never before with a same-sex partner. I looked up Silas, his partner, who is out gay and is married to a man in real life. So they were very popular with the public, and this is a public vote operation.
And Denmark is a very
won.
happy country.
Now, Adam Rippon won Dancing with the Stars in the U.S. in 2018, but he was dancing with a woman, as you like to say.
Oh.
But congratulations to Denmark and to Jacob and Silas.
We got a bunch of AIDS news
Yes.
notes. Yeah. Well, so what do you think about this cure thing that they're talking about?
Fauci
and
the new vaccines.
They said there are 3 ongoing HIV vaccine trials that they have reason to be hopeful about in late-stage trials. Now they could fail, but these were efficacy trials. Fauci says that even a partially effective vaccine is worth deploying because these things don't reach 100%. It's not a total vaccine.
Now, there are 2 ways to do vaccines. You can do preventive vaccines that try to keep people from getting infected. You get the vaccine periodically, and you hope that it, like PrEP, it prevents infection. Then there are therapeutic vaccines that are treatment. Once you have HIV, you use the vaccine periodically so that you don't have to take pills every day, and you can just every few months get a shot, and that's your therapy. These, I think, are preventive vaccines, which have always been much tougher. Therapeutic, they're a little farther along on. But who knows whether these will crash and burn? Many previous attempts have. But I have to say, and you know I'm very negative about the possibility of these, very pessimistic, but this sounded a little more hopeful than I had expected.
And, Trump wants to end AIDS by 20...
Well, wait a minute. One more note on that.
Yes.
You may remember that this all started in 1984 when HHS Secretary Margaret Heckler, under the Reagan administration.
It'll all be ready in a few weeks.
2 years, she said. 2 years in 1984, we'll have a vaccine. 2 years. That was 35 years ago.
But HHS, this is the Trump administration. They did announce this new thing called Ready, Set, PrEP plan. Free PrEP to the uninsured. There are all kinds of reasons for advising you whether to take it, basically having to do with your age and sexual activity or having condomless sex within the last 6 months receptively. The generic of Truvada is set to be released in September 2020. Now, so there is actually a number. You can go to getyourprep.com or call 855-447-8410, and they're supposed to advise you on how you can access this.
Now, here's the problem.
Yeah.
This is a deal between the U.S. and Gilead, for Gilead to supply drugs for the U.S. to give out.
Gilead must have a guilty conscience.
Well, they have lawsuits is what they have. The U.S. is paying Gilead $200 a month. Wait a minute, I should double check that. For this drug, I think it's $200 a month. I'll double check that. But activists are saying, look, all very well to increase the distribution of PrEP, but this is too expensive. Gilead should not be getting this much money for it. It's much cheaper around the world even than this price.
Right.
And this is cheaper than the $2,000 a month that Gilead charges regular people or insurance companies
Not
for this.
$200,000.
$2,000 a month.
$2,000 a month. That's a lot of money.
Meanwhile, they're not going to cover the kind of testing needed to see whether you need
They're
this.
saying you can go to a clinic.
Yeah, and lots of ancillary costs are not being covered. So
you're supposed to have yourself monitored when you're taking this drug
Yes.
for kidney function and
Yes.
other things.
So good, yes. Ideal, no. So look into this and look into your options before you jump into this program. But, you know, it may be helpful for some people.
The head of the FDA under Reagan in the early years of the crisis, Frank Young, has died at the age of 88.
Whoa.
He was criticized for the slow approval of drugs.
We yelled at him.
He opposed home HIV tests as dangerous. Martin Delaney called him as chicken as they come. Sorry, Frank, that's your epitaph.
Well, the White House did issue another World AIDS Day proclamation, and I noticed they had the red ribbon on the White House
Mike
again.
Pence hosted an event at the White House, but he didn't acknowledge the LGBT community. Can you imagine?
Nor did the presidential statement, no mention of any of the most affected by HIV.
Pence was boasting about Ryan White funding, which they have diverted to fund family separation at the border.
Yeah.
Praised the PEPFAR's 15th year, though they're calling for a cut in that.
Yeah.
And there's still no one leading the White House Office on National AIDS Policy. And they're forcing PWAs out of the military now.
Yeah.
So please.
Exactly.
Please. Take my vice president, please.
There's a new study in San Diego that Grindr users have twice as many partners, but fewer HIV infections.
How about that?
Because more of them are on PrEP. And this takes us right, but they also have more sexually transmitted infections.
Yes.
But this takes us right back to the bathhouse argument, when at the beginning of acknowledgement of the epidemic, everybody wanted to close the bathhouses. Oh, vectors of infection.
I wanted them
places to do education.
Regulated, you know.
Well, regulation to some extent, fine.
I
but
was
you
a
don't,
bathhouse monitor.
You don't, God. You don't want to close them because that's a place where you can bring people together for education.
Yeah, but
Grindr is a place where you can bring people together for education.
We weren't looking at people having sex. We just wanted to see that they were supplying condoms to these places, et cetera.
Absolutely,
Those kinds of things.
and education in volume. But if you close the places where it's like if you outlaw abortion and close the abortion clinics, people
Just
are going to go
unsafe.
and have back alley, unsafe abortions. And if you close the bathhouses or shut down Grindr, then you are going to deprive people of education.
We're running out of time. We better do our entertainment news.
All right.
Unless you have some more AIDS news.
The New York City Department of Health has issued new guidelines for PrEP on demand, but they're not recommending it, where you take it just when you're having sex. You take 2 pills before you have sex, you take a pill within 24 hours after, and another 24 hours after that, and that can be 80% effective, whereas full PrEP daily is 99.9% effective.
Okay.
Take your choice.
What do we got? Well, we got news from Billy D. Williams this week.
Whoa!
He's the star of Mahogany from years ago in Star
Love
Wars. He's
that.
now 82. He said he freely identifies as both male and female pronouns now. I think of myself as a relatively colorful character who doesn't take himself or herself too seriously. I'm a very soft person. I'm not afraid to show that side of myself. So it was a little kind of a funny interview.
This is an interview in Esquire, if you want to read the full thing. He also says Donald Glover is very open and kind of fluid and pansexual or whatever. No, Donald.
Donald Glover.
Donald
right.
Glover.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Chris Martin of Coldplay got teased as a gay schoolboy because of how he walked, and he was terrified that he might be gay. But he finally stopped caring at 15, and he said, so what? He grew up, went on to have gay heroes. This is an interview in Rolling Stone.
But he married Gwyneth Paltrow and was consciously uncoupled and is now dating Dakota Johnson of 50 Shades of Grey. Pete Davidson says he used to pleasure himself, I don't know what language is acceptable, to pictures of Leonardo DiCaprio. And the world is opening up.
In what role?
I don't know. Set your DVRs, sit in front of your TVs, order Showtime, Monday, December 8th. The L Word,
I have
Generation Q. Well, it's whatever it
Premiering
is.
on Showtime on Sunday.
Okay.
This one is
Getting my dates confused.
they're calling it a prequel to the L Word, but it has two trans men in the main cast.
Well, it has some of the same characters who have grown up, so it couldn't be a prequel.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, you know, we're different things.
The L Word, Generation Q.
Right. So we saw Jagged Little Pill.
Yeah.
Say the composer's name again, since I mispronounced her name.
Alanis Morissette.
Right. Lots of contemporary issues in this. Kind of a witless book, though.
I thought it was really, in the end, very superficial and meaningless. I mean, it was well-meaning. That was my, verdict
God.
about it.
Every contemporary issue was in this show.
Yeah, but in the end, they wrapped it all up with neat little bows and made happy endings, and I thought that was really
It was
invalid.
written by Diablo Cody, who won the Academy Award for screenplay
Yeah.
for Juno. Lauren Patton is Jo, the surefire young lesbian.
And she has the big number in the show, which is the famous song "You Ought to Know," and that is a real showstopper in the middle of the second act. It's really terrific, and she did a terrific job, and the whole cast does a terrific job on that. But I don't know if you want to go see the whole show for
In honor of the opening of the show this week, she made a big donation to New Alternatives, which you mentioned. She said, "For all the kids who need safe spaces, ample resources, and open hearts as they find their place in the world." She was one of the leads in Fun Home, by the way.
Yes, she was. And I finally caught up with Fleabag on Amazon Prime. I got suckered into that for the moment. We'll see how long that lasts. When you go to Whole Foods and you get 67 cents back on your bill as an Amazon Prime member, you think, wait a minute, why am I doing this? But Fleabag I mostly liked, but I was really disappointed that the main deal in the second season was about her falling in love with a priest. You know, what could be a more cliched storyline than that?
Right.
Everything around it I thought was terrific, and her relationship with her father and her sister and everybody else, and it's very clever and well done, but man, a priest?
And now that it's on Netflix, I finally saw The Irishman, Robert De Niro, etc. It is 3.5 hours of toxic masculinity, if you can send it. There's lots of gay content of cursing out gay people and using everybody is insulted with the C word.
I hate
Richard
that.
Nixon's favorite word.
That one,
That is said. No, not the other one.
Yeah.
That would be a British movie. And, so it's an ordeal, but they still are touting it as the #1 film for the Oscar at the moment. Although 1917, if you want to talk about toxic masculinity, it's about everybody killing each other in World War I. So these are the films that are rising to the top on the Oscar stakes.
Well, they're not the only ones. Have you seen Marriage Story, the Noah
Not yet.
Baumbach? That seems to be getting a lot of play. I'm just going through the calendar in my head, and I realized that Sunday is December 8th, which is the premiere of the L Word. So it is Sunday.
It is.
Sunday.
By the way, did
December
you
8th.
enjoy the Thanksgiving Day parade on on television?
Like
It's run by a gay guy.
Like I watch it.
The creative producer is Wesley Whatley, gave a big interview to The Advocate. He's done 17 of those parades, and he's now in the leadership. What would you do without us, America?
Congratulations. All right, well, enough of that and enough of this, and we will see you next week. Go to gayusatv.org for more information.